Completing a staff request for a standard DCU fixed-term contract is a straightforward process. In this scenario, you want to hire Philip Jackson, a temporary replacement for Jane Mackin, who's going on maternity leave. The role is as school assistant. You've interviewed Philip, and in consultation with your HR officer, you want to appoint him to the Secretary Grade 2 post on the 5th point of the salary scale. You need to raise a staff request so that the appointment can be approved by the head of school, the faculty dean, HR and finance, and a contract issued. To access the staff request application, you simply type https://staffrequest.dcu.ie in the address bar of your internet browser and hit return. You're brought to the login page where you log in using your standard email username and password. This brings you to the requisitions page where you can see any staff requests that you have previously created. To create a new request, click the Create New button. The requisition form is divided into 4 tabs. Section 1 records the reason for the staff request and where it's located within DCU. Section 2 details the type of candidate. Is this an existing member of staff or not? Section 3 records the salary and work pattern information, and finally, Section 4 captures how the appointment will be funded. As you can see, mandatory fields are denoted as standard by a red asterisk. The Notes field is used to record any items that you may want those further down the line to be aware of. The sections do not need to be completed in any order. You can enter and save information associated with any section by clicking the Save button at any time. Clicking Save saves the request as a draft and generates an ID number for the request, as you can see up here. So let's start with section 1 and ask, what is the request for? There are a number of options in the drop-down list, including a change to an existing employee, a contract extension, which would be in the same role, a follow-on contract in a different role or school or unit, a new hire, and finally a rehire of a former employee. In this case, Philip has never worked at DCU before, so you select New Hire. If you choose New Hire, you must attach the CV. So you do this by clicking the Select Files button. You select the appropriate CV and click Open. You can see that the CV is now attached. Next, you need to select the legal entity. The application form is used by all of DCU, including its campus companies, so there are a number of separate legal entities listed here. In this case, the hire is within the university, so you select DCU. Philip Jackson, your new hire, is being hired by the School of Physical Sciences. So for Faculty or Management Unit, you select Faculty of Science or Health. The school or unit will be the School of Physical Sciences, just down here. In the Reports To field, you enter the name of the person to whom the employee will report to on a day-to-day basis. This could be the head of school or unit or the principal investigator in the research centre. In this case, you enter the head of school, Enda McGlynn. Finally, in section 1, you must enter business objectives. These set out the reason for the employee being offered a fixed duration contract instead of a permanent one. For help writing business objectives, please consult your HR officer. I've prepared one earlier, so I'm going to cut and paste it into this field. Notice that the reason should end with "this contract is therefore offered on such objective grounds." So let's move on to section 2. Section 2 details the type of candidate, whether an existing member of staff or not. So for a quick recap, Philip Jackson, your new hire, he's replacing a staff member on maternity leave, Jane Mackin. And when she returns, Philip's contract will end. Staff ID can be a bit of a confusing field. This is not your staff ID. Rather, it is the staff ID of the employee if they already work in DCU. You enter their DCU ID number here, if you know it, and if it's not known, you simply enter not known. Now, if the person is new, as in the case of Philip, you simply enter new into the field. You type in the forename, in this case Philip, and the surname, Jackson. Okay, so job text and job grade. What's the difference here? First of all, job grades are long established grades or levels within DCU. Let's consider a couple of examples. A job text, which is a description or a title, could be HR officer, but the job grade would likely be senior administrative assistant. In another example, you might have registry assistant as the job text, but the job grade would be secretary grade 3. In this example, Philip is being hired as a school assistant, so we enter that into the job text field. And you select secretary grade 2 from the job grade drop-down. Click the calendar icon to open the calendar where you can quickly select the appropriate dates. In this case, we're starting on the 1st of March 2017 and ending on the 30th of September 2017. Next, you select the employee status. Okay, so Philip is being employed on a full-time basis as a direct replacement for somebody already working within the university. All full-time members of DCU are required to be members of the relevant DCU pension scheme. Philip's employee status will be fixed-term pensionable, meaning that he has a temporary contract but it is pensionable employment. Next, you select the employee substatus, which is the person's work pattern. There are 3 options. The first is full-time, which is self-explanatory. The second is part-time casual, which is only used for staff who are part-time casual and who are paid by submitting claim forms. The third is part-time fixed, for example, a fraction of a full-time role such as 3-day week, mornings only, or a 4-day week. In this scenario, Philip will be full-time. Now, if a person you intend to employ needs a valid work permit, select the work permit checkbox. Staff coming from outside the EU and Norway, Switzerland and Iceland need a work permit. In this example, a work permit is not required, so leave the checkbox cleared. And that's the end of section 2. Now you move on to section 3. Here you need to enter information that allows approvers to establish the total cost of Philip's contract. What is the FTE and what's the multiplier? These could easily be terms new to you. Let me explain. FTE stands for full-time equivalent. If a person is working full-time, their FTE is 1. If they are working a 3-day week, their FTE is 0.6, which is 60% of the full-time equivalent worker in the same role. Similarly, a person's pay is calculated on the basis of their work pattern. If they are full-time, the pay multiplier is set to 1. If they are working a 3-day week, the pay multiplier is set to 0.6. Just to say that FTE and multiplier are usually the same value, but they drive different calculations in the system and have to be entered independently of one another. As you have selected substatus is equal to full-time, the FTP and multiplier are already pre-populated with the value of 1. Next, you need to select the salary grade. In DCU, we tend to use job grades and salary grades interchangeably, but they are distinct terms and must be entered separately. In section 2, you entered the job grade, and here you need to select an appropriate salary grade. In this example, Philip will be on the Secretary 2 Accounts Assistant 2 salary grade. For the majority of DCU roles, the job grades have a matching salary grade, so selecting the grade is fairly straightforward. But for some roles, it may be difficult to select the appropriate job grade and salary grade. In these instances, your HR officer will help you out. For most established job grades, there are associated salary scales and a number of incremental points in each scale. You select the appropriate point in the scale as agreed with your HR officer. So for this scenario, Philip will be placed on the 5th point of the scale. For some research-funded positions, a certain percentage pension contribution is required. For all other posts, including the example, we're going to leave employer pension cost blank. So the system calculates the total cost of the job based on the salary, PRSI, the contract duration and the employer's percentage contribution, if required. The total amount is displayed in the total cost pro rata field. The total amount will be scrutinised by the finance approver to ensure that there are sufficient funds in the cost centre associated with the staff request. Insufficient funding is a key reason why staff requests are rejected. Most DCU salaries are incremental, and the number of increments is determined by the particular grade of the employee. You select the increments checkbox if the increments are due to be paid. This is normal for full-time roles in DCU. DCU's core employee database allows employees to access financial and personal information relating to them online. When you select the annual leave on core checkbox, the screen extends so that you can enter the work group to which the person is assigned for annual leave or flexi time purposes. Usually there's one work group per school or unit, but there can be multiple work groups depending on how each unit or school sets itself up. Each work group has a description and a code that need to be entered here. So we enter P1 as the code and physics as the description. The school assistants are not usually able to avail of flexi time, so we leave that option for the moment. Now, if a person is going to be filling in for somebody else, they will be acting up to the role, and that's what the acting up checkbox is about. But for this application, we can also ignore that. And that's the end of section 3. Finally, let's fill in section 4. This section details how you intend to fund the post. So a cost centre is a part of DCU from which costs may be charged for accounting purposes. It's a standard term. Staff members are funded from a range of different cost centres. If you intend to fund the post from just one cost centre, you enter the cost centre code in the project code field, followed by 100% in the percentage field. Okay, so for this example, we'll use the code D10001. The form provides for up to 3 cost centres to be used to fund a post with varying proportions of each based on the percentage you enter into the appropriate percentage box. Aggresso is DCU's purchasing system, and the expense code drop-down list is used to distinguish various types of expenditure in Aggresso itself. Make sure to select the appropriate code, as your application will be rejected if this code is incorrect. If you have any queries about it, please contact the Finance Office. In this case, the role is a temporary admin role, so you select 201401 Admin Salaries Temp. The EOR percentage toggle box applies to research funded roles only. For all other types of contracts, such as the role we're discussing here, please leave this empty. In the charged from and charged to dates, you enter the dates from which the post should be charged against the relevant cost centre. You can click the calendar icon to access the calendars in each case. It's mandatory to enter the dates even if only one cost centre is being used. In this case, we want the contract to start on the 1st of March 2017 and end on the 30th of September 2017. Usually you enter the same dates as the contract start and end dates, as the cost centre will be used to fund the position for the entire duration of the contract. For research contracts, for instance, it's possible to fund a position from a series of sequential cost centres, where you enter dates to be charged for each cost centre in turn. The funding source defines where the money is actually coming from. Exchequer funded means the money is from DCU or another Exchequer funded agency such as Science Foundation Ireland or the Health Research Board. EU funded means the money is coming from an EU funded agency, for example FP7. Other or self-funded means the funding is coming from a source other than the Exchequer or EU. Typically this would be used for campus company roles or roles funded by industry. If you select Exchequer funded, you must enter the name of the funding body. For DCU Exchequer funded posts, enter DCU as the funding agency. For research funded posts, you must enter the name of the project being undertaken. This area below here is for research funded roles only, so ignore that part of the form for now. You have now completed the 4 sections of the staff request form. Now that you have raised the request to hire Philip Jackson, you need to put it through for approval. Remember, you can save the request at any point during the process, and when you do this, the requisition ID number is generated and the request is saved as a draft. You can access requests at any time by clicking Requisitions at the top bar. Clicking the ellipsis button beside any of your applications gives you access to a number of options. Copy lets you make a copy of the draft. Edit allows you to make changes to the draft. Details allows you to view but not change the details. Excel output exports the content of the requisition to an Excel spreadsheet, and delete allows you to delete the draft altogether. So let's select Edit to return to your draft. You can make any final changes before putting through the request for approval. Make sure that all the details in each section are correct. Now, we'd really strongly advise that you do check everything is in place so you don't have to go through the whole process again. In some cases, additional approvals are required. Clicking the Transfer Draft button allows you to transfer a draft to a colleague within DCU. This transfers the draft request out of your control and somebody else will submit it. In this case, you don't want to transfer the draft, so you click the Close button. You click Submit to send the form to the relevant head of school. In this case, it's the head of the Physical Sciences. But what happens if a mandatory piece of information is left out? For example, let's see what happens if I leave this percentage field blank. As you can see, the message appears. The missing item is highlighted in red. You simply enter the missing information, save and submit again. To log off from the session, you click the Log Off button. Depending on what internet browser you're using, you may be asked you want to leave this site. After clicking the Log Off button, the browser may not close. Simply close the browser yourself by clicking the Close button. So you've submitted the request for Philip Jackson. Once approved by the head of school, the faculty dean, HR and finance, the contract will be issued to Philip. Now, as you can see, Philip's contract contains the details that you entered in the staff request form. It can now be dispatched and Philip can take on his new role at DCU.